This is the Bryan Hyde Show.
Well, hello, welcome to the show. Every Tuesday I have the chance to sit down with Eric Peters from Eric Peters Autos to talk about what's going on. Eric, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm still here. My site's not. Apparently, there's a worldwide Cloudflare outage. I'm not exactly sure what Cloudflare is, but it's affecting a lot of websites around the world. So to those listening who are wondering why my site's down, it's not just my site, it's a lot of sites. And that actually gives me some comfort because I think if it were just an attack directed against me, I'd be more worried. But it just seems to be some kind of technical glitch. So anyway, that's why.
Now that I think about it, you've been kind of critical of President Trump lately. I'm just saying. No, I'm joking, but at the same time,
Right.
When you and I get together, we do spend a lot of time talking about, boy, this is what's going on that we can't support that Trump is doing. But it's not a matter of, well, finally, we've fallen into line with Kamala Harris and everybody else. Do you see the sifting that's taking place right now? I think we're to the point now where we're basically, with Trump going after Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, the division of MAGA, if it hasn't begun, it's close at hand.
Oh yeah, to not notice it is like saying you can't notice the Grand Canyon. This isn't a crack in the concrete. This is a big deal. And going after Massey was one thing. I found it reprehensible, but you could argue that Massey differed from MAGA in a number of key ways, and so perhaps Trump regarded him as an impediment to his agenda. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's probably the fiercest MAGA person that there is, and has been one of Trump's great allies until 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago. All of a sudden, she's a leftist. Trump called her that. She's a leftist.
Well, and a traitor.
And a traitor. It's unhinged, it's
that?
surreal. And this was because she was one of those who voted to release the so-called Epstein files, meaning whatever information that the government has, which Trump said he was going to do, as we all know, back in 2024, when all of a sudden now it's apparently a Democrat hoax. But wait a minute, it isn't, because of the political fallout, because people who support Trump, who haven't lost their minds and drunk the Kool-Aid, are just appalled by all of this. They don't like the attacks on Massey, and they like the attacks on Greene even less. And I think finally somebody whispered in the Orange Emperor's ear that, hey, this is bad. You're fracturing your movement. You're losing political support. You've got to get ahead of this. And so now he's trying to get ahead of it, but it still looks bad. For a guy who likes to project that he's, strong and decisive, well, he seems to be very indecisive, doesn't he? He's turned around now and said, sure, okay, we have nothing to hide, after trying to hide it for months. Now they're going to let the information out. I suspect, though, that what we're going to get, well, two things I think may happen. One, there still has to be a vote to do this. And it's debatable whether that vote is going to go in the way that would result in this information being disclosed. Secondly, we're probably going to end up seeing the same thing we saw with the Kennedy materials, i.e. page after page of heavily redacted stuff that is essentially worthless. I don't think there are going to be any great revelations, because I don't think Trump would have given an inch on this if he felt that there were something that was going to be damaging to him politically was about to be exposed. But it's a mess. It's a real mess, and it's a mess of his own making. This is something people want to know about, understandably. They want to find out exactly whether our entire government, effectively, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, have been compromised by what I think it's not unreasonable to believe is this honeypot operation that was being fronted and run by Jeffrey Epstein, and that was probably under the control of nefarious foreign interests.
It's interesting, too, to see, Trump has played this off, as well, it's a hoax. It's just, this is a Democrat distraction, but it's a good idea. We should go ahead and they should vote to release this stuff. And to watch him go back and forth on this leaves me, as well as a lot of people, going, well, who can you trust on this? I do agree with one thing that Trump said, though, and Eric, maybe you can help me if there's another way to see this, but if there was something truly compromising, I mean, like really compromising of Trump himself, wouldn't it have already been released?
I've got a good answer for that. And I think the answer is that the reason the Democrats didn't deploy that weapon is because they knew it was a mutually assured destruction kind of a thing. There were enough people on their side of the aisle politically that are involved in this that for their own crass reasons of self-interest, they wanted to keep it close to their breast. And another factor, Nick Fuentes mentioned this the other day, and I think he was spot on. The Democrats never promised to release the information, did they? Whereas Trump essentially built his 2024 run on, among other things, releasing the information. So, what are the people who voted for him supposed to do? They were told, vote for this guy because this guy is finally going to get to the bottom of this sordid tale that we've been hearing about now for years. Let's find out exactly what was going on. And then all of a sudden, he just does a complete wheelabout and says, oh, no, nothing to see here. It's outrageous. And people are tired of it and they don't want to put up with it anymore. And I think it's been compounded by his reversals on so many other things as well, and his imposition of the tariff taxes, his obsession with fighting all these wars and blowing things up all over the place, and being obsessively concerned with the interests of Israel first rather than America first. It's a real problem.
Yeah. No, everything that you've said, I think is spot on. It's just it's so curious to see the MAGA faction start to have to realize, yes, we've, like you've said before, Eric, we voted for him. We knew of his flaws beforehand, but he was still better than the alternative. But now he's kind of doing what the alternative was going to do. It's like,
and he's in a way,
at least we'd still be putting up some resistance if it was a Democrat in there.
That in a way that old line about how history repeats as farce is true. He has apparently got no self-control. He is now ranting like an infuriated seventh grader, denouncing Massey, for example, and about his wife and his marriage. This is the president of the United States, hurling insults at a man on a personal level. It's not about policy disagreements anymore. It's, your wife, your wife died only a year ago, and now you got a new one, younger one. You must be a gold, she's a gold digger. And if you want to go down that route, Kash Patel has got, he's like 42 and he's got a 23-year-old country singer girlfriend. Where does that get us?
Well, and the president's taken heat today for telling a reporter, "Quiet, piggy." It's like, I'm not looking for a reason to criticize Trump. I'm just saying, even my kids are expected to have at least, some modicum of
some control and also some honesty, or there's something either worse than that, actually, for him to get out there and say that there's no inflation. He says practically no inflation. You have to be delusional or dissociated from reality, which is probably the better explanation to say something like that, because it's obviously not true. And, everybody is outraged by him saying these things. So he's got a big problem politically, I think. And I think we saw the fallout of that in the recent elections in my state, Virginia, also New Jersey, and of course, New York City. And if they're fools, I think, if they claim that, well, that's just leftists being leftists going to leftist. This was almost a double-digit repudiation of Trump's MAGA movement as it stands right now, because it's not about making America great anymore. It seems to be about making billionaires and Israel great again.
Yep, I'm with you there. It's so I don't want to spend all of my time, picking on Trump, but I also want to make sure people out there who are freedom-minded and who are more attached to their principles than they are to personality, I want you to know you are not alone. There are people out there, Eric, I think is a great example of this, who are willing to question the narrative and sometimes push back against it. Sometimes it gets uncomfortable. We have yet to see, the full fury of the true believers when they're offended. But just got to take care that you don't become one of those people who's so blinded by, but our guy can do this and is the only way. It's like,
yeah, we don't need to embarrass ourselves and just completely undermine our position to critique the statist, collectivist, authoritarian left. We were all upset about the fact that the Democrats and the left were just blatantly lying about Joe Biden's decline. That this obviously senescent old guy was a problem, and now we've got an 80-year-old guy who appears to have some kind of mental cognitive issues going on by the way he's behaving. It's not good. You can't defend this stuff. Regardless of whether you think that this person is the avatar of your side, it's not about defending the man. It's about defending the principles and ideas that matter.
Here, here. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk automotive things, Eric. We're coming fast to the end of the year, but is there anything noteworthy that stands out about 2025 of any of the vehicles that you tested? What would you say were the high points or the low points?
Well, let's see. Two things I think that are worth touching on. Dodge is frantically, desperately trying to fix the problem of its own making, which is the Dodge Charger. As everybody knows, after the 2023 model year, they thought it would be a grand idea to take the engine out of the Charger and put in a battery and electric motors. Well, that went over like a lead Zeppelin. And they literally have not been able to move any of these things. I've not seen one in the wild yet. 2 years these vehicles have been on available, and you never see them. They're not selling. So they're frantically trying to fix that by putting an engine in the Charger for 2026. And that's good, but I think that they still haven't learned their lesson because it's not going to be a V8. They're using their 3-liter inline Hurricane 6, which is a good engine. I like 6-cylinder engines. I particularly like inline 6-cylinder engines because they're very smooth, they're very free revving, they're wonderful in a BMW or a Mercedes. The problem is the Charger's a muscle car, and muscle cars are not powered by inline 6-cylinder engines, no matter how powerful they are. This is an error that anybody who is at all a car guy would immediately understand. A performance car is one thing. A muscle car is another thing. They want the rattle and the roll and the boom, 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 boom. That's part of the experience of owning a muscle car. People who are wanting a car like that are not going to a BMW store. They go to the Dodge store because they want that Hemi V8. So that's one problem. A bigger problem is that it's automatic only, no manual transmission, and it's all-wheel drive. So effectively, it's a performance car. A Porsche 911 is a performance car. Very quick, very fast. But nobody with any sense would call a Porsche 911 a muscle car, right? So, is the Charger with the same basic kind of drivetrain, a high-powered 6-cylinder engine, all-wheel drive, automatic, is that a muscle car? I don't think so. So I think they're going to find that it's not going to sell either. And the final problem they've got is that it's more expensive than it ever has been. It's several $1,000s more expensive now in real terms than the old V8 powered Charger was. And there are only so many boomer guys who've got the money, to buy a $60,000 car at this point. And the entire industry is afflicted by this problem. What they need to figure out how to do, if they can, is to market a car like that at around $33,000 and ideally even less than that, so that young guys, that's the demographic. You're talking about a two-door muscle car. Who likes those cars? Young guys like those cars. Yep. Not older guys who've got a wife and kids and they need an SUV or they need a minivan, right? It just seems so self-evident to me. And yet the manufacturers at the highest level, these corporate guys, don't seem to understand what really ought to be obvious.
Okay, that's a great example, actually. And anything else on the EV front? It seems to me we kind of come over a little hump.
Oh yeah, it's utterly collapsing. There was a hilarious thing that popped up the other day that I wrote about. Mercedes has an ultra luxury line called Maybach, and they make an electric version of their EQE SUV that is something like twice the price. You can pick up the merely Mercedes version of that EV for about 90 grand. Well, the Maybach version is $180,000. Wow. It too has gone over like a lead balloon with another lead balloon riding on its back. And so they're so desperate to get rid of these things, they're discounting them by, wait for it, $50,000. $50,000 off. That's how bad it is. And it's, the reason it's so bad is because what are you getting other than you're paying more? You're getting this battery powered car. Well, there's really not that much difference, is there, between one battery and another battery? Oh, this battery's a higher powered battery. Well, so what? The difference between a Mercedes and a Maybach used to be that in the Mercedes, you got a nice inline 6 or maybe a V8. The Maybach, on the other hand, had a V12. That was something special. Really something that nobody else had except for a very few people who could afford a car at that price point. Something that it wasn't just psychological. It was, wow, you pop the hood and look at that beautiful engine. Now you get a bigger battery. Yay. It's not going to work, and this is Porsche's having problems with their battery powered cars. It's across the industry. This whole thing's a disaster. I think, the natural market for EV is on the low end. They should be cheap. everybody talks about how an EV is simpler, and that's true. So really simplify it and bring the price down like they do in China. Make these things the entry level car for young people, for teenagers and people, people who are just not in a position to be able to spend 30 or 40 grand on a car. How about a $10,000 little car that would be great to run around in your city in? You don't need it to go on the highway and go 300 miles at 75 miles an hour, but it would be great if you could take it from A to B in the city, and maybe it didn't go faster than 50 or 60 miles an hour, but it only cost you $10,000.
Well, I'm guessing that Maybach probably has the nicer stereo speakers, so the piped-in car sounds for the EV,
Well, even
sound
that,
that much better in,
the funny thing is,
7.1 or
boy, they've really painted themselves in a corner, though, because even on the lower end these days, the audio systems that you can get in a $35,000 car are absolutely phenomenal. They would have been considered, like highly high-end elite level equipment 10 or 15 years ago. But now every car has a good audio system. So you're getting to these hair-splitting differences. Oh, this one has 12 speakers rather than 10. And it's only got an 800-watt amplifier as opposed to a 1200-watt. Yeah, of course, I get it. Audiophiles will pick these fine differences, but for most people, you and me, you get in the car and turn that thing on, and it sounds like a concert hall, and you're very happy with it. It's not like back in the day when we were kids, and you got into a Chevette that had an AM radio with one speaker. If you were lucky, right? And you went down to the stereo store as soon as you could, and you bought. Whoa, I've got a 4-speaker stereo now, and it has a tape deck. Look at me. It's one of these things that has been democratized. These things that used to be luxuries are now just completely common. And that's a big dilemma for these luxury brands, because how do you convince people to pay literally twice as much for something that essentially is the same? It's just got the badge and the higher price.
No, well said. Fun memory too about the Chevette. Oh boy. Back when I would tell my friends, yeah, I drive a vet.
Right. That used to be common, right? Exactly.
Eric, thanks again for being my guest. As always, great to visit with you. And who knows what surprises we'll have in store next week.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll be here next week. Hopefully my website will be up by next week.
Absolutely. Well, all the best. Keep it safe, and we'll look forward to our next visit.
Good deal. Thank you, Bryan.
This is the Bryan Hyde Show.